If you want to cram as much improvement as possible in these last couple of days, this video is for you. And anything I give you here is either going to be instantly applicable that you can apply instantly and improve, or it's a way to take advantage of a bigger strategy in this small time frame with a few adjustments. So hi, I'm Karthik. These are some last minute SAT reading tips and strategies that you can instantly apply to boost your score. All right. So the first thing that I want to put inside your head is that you shouldn't change your reading pattern, right? A lot of people will watch videos like this and see a strategy online that's going to be like, oh, you should skim this portion and fully read this portion and do this when you encounter these kind of questions. And those might be good strategies, better than the ones that you have now. But because of your time frame, right? And this is especially relevant if you have a week or less left for your SAT, do not change your strategy. Do not change your reading pattern. And this is a huge mistake because a lot of people will change their reading pattern, take a couple of tests and perform similarly, but on the real test, they just completely, do way worse than they anticipate because of the fact that they haven't practiced that strategy enough. 1 week is not enough time to get to the same level with the strategy that you're using now with a brand new strategy, right? Because you need a sense of familiarity with the strategy in order to be able to use it well. If you've used a strategy in the past that's extremely good and you switched over temporarily and then you want to revert back to that strategy, fine, because you have a genuine amount of practice with it that's significant for you to be able to see change, right? And, a common example is skimming, right? Some people will recommend skimming and maybe you do a full read, right? And I would not recommend, changing to a different strategy just because you think it's better, right? This is not something that you're going to do now because you're going to be less effective with it. And how you should treat changes in your strategy, right, is what you're going to do. You're going to mainly stay with the strategy that you have because of the experience that you have with it. But what you're going to do is keep using that strategy again and again. And if you ever have certain problems with the strategy that you're using, or you find something that's a slight issue, right, what you're going to do is make a slight change, right? You're not going to change an overarching portion. You're going to change something extremely small, right? Because the goal is that you want a small change to be able to have a big impact. And you want to practice that change and make sure that it works at least more than once, right? So you guarantee that it works and it won't make you fail, right? And if it's a big change, you might want to reconsider even doing it, even if it makes your score better, because you're putting yourself at risk for the real test. Okay. Second thing is you can increase your score without adding more effort, right? So one of the main ideas of reading and the reading section in general, and I preach this a lot, is the idea that reading scores are so practice dependent, right? How well you do on reading is so dependent on just how much you practice it, right? There's no fundamental skill that you have to get better at or worse at in order to get good at reading, right? So it's all based on your practice. It's based on how much practice do you do and how much are you actually focusing on it, right? And as a result, right, if we want to see improvement in the overall section, it might be best to focus on only a small portion of it and use all of our time for that small portion rather than dividing it amongst all the other types of questions, right? So what essentially I'm saying, right, imagine I have 5 essential questions that I'm struggling with, right? And I have 10 days left. So I could spend 2 days per one of those things, have absolutely no break, and make very little progress in all of them, right? Or what I can do, which is going to be way more effective, is what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one skill, and that's going to be my worst skill, right? I'm going to find out what my worst skill is based on what's my weakest question type. I'm going to test and I'm going to find out based on my test score, based on all my scores, based on how I generally do or what I generally think about that problem, right? That is going to be my basis for figuring out what my lowest/weakest score is, right? And increasing your volume without adding effort is basically this idea that I'm going to do less work, right? And I'm not actually doing less work. I'm keeping the same amount of work, but I'm focusing it on one type of problem. Because if I can focus all my work on that one type of problem, I'm going to increase the amount that I can improve on that one problem. Because reading is so practice dependent, if I divide out my time off everything, I'm going to see an insignificant change in all of them. But if I pour all of my time into one kind of thing, I'm going to see the most ROI from that. So really take from this and figure out right now what's the most difficult thing you would say, and then focus all your effort on that. Okay, reading more effectively, right? Here, this is just one tip that I learned, and it's a small one that you can instantly implement, and you probably already do it to some extent. You just don't do it as like vocally, right? I say vocally, but you're not actually speaking in the test, but I mean like in your head. You don't do it as explicitly as you normally should and that you're going to do now, right? After every single paragraph, what I want you to do is take a mental note of what's the main idea of that paragraph. And then after you figure out the main idea of the paragraph, figure out what happened within the paragraph, right? So describe the series of events and the main idea. And it should be like a 2 to 3 sentence thing that literally takes like 5 seconds to say in your head, and then you move on. So you're only adding about 20 to 25 seconds for every single passage, but these are so essential because you're already effectively doing this every time you read a question and trying to recall the passage. Except now that you've explicitly said it in your head and, vocalize the idea in your head, it becomes so much easier, faster, and you actually remember more when you actually want to recall that, right? It's so useful because not only are you going to be able to recall the information better, you're going to know exactly where the information is on the paragraph, right? And that's the primary thing I want you to focus on, is the fact that you're going to know within the paragraph, right, exactly where the information is. So you're going to be able to go to that paragraph exactly when a question asks for it and know what the information is, read the explicit evidence, and then have the best answer, right? Because you know where it is and you just save so much time doing this. You spend a little bit of time doing it and your reward is just so much more with your increased, I guess, knowledge and capacity. One thing I also describe is this pencil paper technique, where if you find yourself missing up the order of words or missing like words in general while reading and it affecting your questions, right? Because anytime you mess up word order or you just miss words by reading too fast, which we're all pressured to do with the reading SAT, right? If you miss words, what you're going to do is you're going to take your pencil, right? And you're going to go over every word. So right now, if on my screen, like I use my finger, I'll go on my screen. I'll say after every paragraph, make a mental note, and my finger is under every single word as I do it. And it's not really going to slow you down as long as your pencil like keeps a proper pace and, you're able to just read normally. But what it does is it forces you to focus on one word at a time. So you don't jump words, you don't skip words, you don't jump ideas. And regardless if you actually struggle with this problem or not, what I want you to do is take it seriously anyway. Do it anyway. Try it anyway. See if it works for you. If it doesn't, leave it. But if it does, this is one of those things that are a little on the smaller end that I would recommend that you start doing even if you have a week left. But if you have a couple days left, I would not recommend this. Okay, question priority. Now, this is an obvious one that we obviously want to figure out what questions that we should do first and which question we should do last. But more than that, right? Let's figure that out for our passages itself, right? So first, I already told you have to do this, but you have to figure out exactly what you struggle with. And the only way you're doing that is by looking at your tests or testing yourself and looking at the trends of your exams, right? Figure out what questions you're struggling with the most. And then what type of question is it, right? The idea is what passages are going to mess you up the most and what type of questions mess you up the most. And what you're going to do is you're going to skip them. Skip the hardest questions and passages, because why waste your time on something that's harder when there's an easier thing that's worth the same amount of points? That's a common misconception, but every single question is designed to take the same amount of time and have a standardized level of points. So every single question on the SAT is going to be the same amount of points. So focus all your effort on the easy and the medium ones and do the hard ones last, because you want to make sure that all the easy ones and all the medium ones are correct, because you can guarantee their accuracy with a little more time, and that's going to boost your overall accuracy because everything is worth the same. Okay. What are you going to cram, right? For reading, I still want you with the same strategy as I mentioned before. Cram the one question that you struggle with. On your last day, I wouldn't recommend doing too much, maybe reviewing a couple passage, using the main idea strategy that I talked about. But I really wouldn't cram too much, only because the reading strategies for learning are so practice dependent that you're not really going to improve in one day, right? There's no ability to do that. So it's just everything you've done beforehand, right? And if you're going to cram, figure out your weakest questions and do multiple examples of those questions on the SAT Sweetbank and Khan Academy. And it has to be a specific skill if you want to see improvement. If you're interested in an SAT community where you can get accountability and actually learn from me one-on-one in live lectures that are hosted a bunch of times a week for a low price per lecture, which is way cheaper than SAT prep, apply in the link in description, because I only have a limited amount of spots, and every couple of people that join, I increase the price so I can keep the community small and tight knit. So if you're interested in that, the link is in the description. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you learned something today.